Hello Internet, hello wotv community, I'm Jackie Fox, and if you're playing War of the Visions right now, you're probably thinking about something that we call the crunch. It's going to be a period of time, also known as the road to worldwide, in which between now and about the middle of September, we're going to be facing an accelerated schedule. That means that both the units that you see in front of you right now, as well as the units that are going to be released in JP over about the next month, are all going to be crammed into that month together. I guess. I think actually that they're pacing this really strangely, so they're either going to have to accelerate the pace that they release these, maybe releasing all of the 70 cost units on the same week or something, or they're going to have to stretch it out even further than they initially advertised, which honestly I don't think players are going to mind. We wouldn't really mind if the crunch was a little less crunchy and a little bit more drawn out. But it still can happen, even though we haven't seen a tremendous amount of schedule acceleration yet. But one of the first units I want to point out from this period of time is one that everyone's going to be getting. There's no viz to this character. He is a free MR unit, and he's quite good. This guy has a pretty imposing design. He's built like a bit of a brick wall. And he's certainly not as tanky as Raldor, but he is certainly quite a tough boy. A little bit more oriented towards attack. This is a passive and passive upgrade that we're going to see a lot more throughout this video, so keep that in mind. Also, agility and extra movement, really good for a strike unit like this. Didn't really have any good passives. He has the ability, he has courage and AP because he's a martialist. He can also dispel courage and get allies to dispel courage while buffing accuracy. This is also going to remove follow-up casts, and it's going to boost his AoE resistance. And he has a number of ways of boosting his AoE resistance, which is going to make him tougher, but strictly more lines of a brawler, which means that he can fit with Raldor pretty well because they're not really stepping on each other's toes. Also has movement to target panel, reduced counter chance for a target, which can really deal with some nasty effects right now, although some of the newer nasty counters really leave strike out of it, so he already wasn't worried too much about that, but maybe this supports allies. Defense penetration 40 for 3 turns on this skill is pretty helpful for him because he only got the 40 defense penetration from his passives. Also some bonus damage if they have some fairly common modifiers. Decreasing AoE resistance also, I still don't see what the upgrade here is, but somehow this gets upgraded. Just this cast and 3 turns. So 3 turns of AoE resistance down 30, which is quite a debuff. Before dealing AoE damage, that's going to hit quite hard. This is going to be kind of an LB level hit, I think. Very strong skill. In terms of these other sub-jobs, I think I really tend more towards Sniper, and it's mainly for these, for the ranged skills. Dispel Spread is a pretty cool skill. It gives him the ability to dispel. Also Disable and reducing agility at a range instead of doing it close up. I think those things could be beneficial for him, but this could also hold him back on certain maps as well, if it, just depending on how it hits in there. If you have some slash up, this can be an okay job, but I don't think he really got great stuff out of it. Maybe you just go with the extra martialist stuff, but I don't know. I think there's more utility here in Sniper. It's just, meh. So his sub-jobs don't really turn me on, but he's a pretty cool unit and an excellent addition to the strike repertoire. Another thing that I want to point out, a free Esper and card. We're going to be getting this with a raid, and the card is going to be for red mages. Yay, free red mage card, always happy about that, right? And then there's going to be, lances, in addition to bows. So between those 3, they're going to be getting pierce attack up, and I do know that there's a few ranged units that also have something like Trick Lancer or something that could actually benefit from this that you wouldn't think of. There's also a number of red mages that have stuff like Lancer, I think. Maybe. But Always Welcome is 18 accuracy, and then the unit effects on this are pretty good. 8 agility, or 8% agility, and 8 AoE resistance. But that being said, the card isn't super amazing. It's pretty cool. It's great that we get it for free. The thing that's really exciting about this as a free get is the Esper itself. And the reason for that is, and this is going to be kind of a new pattern of them putting like really expensive skills way over here that aren't related to this. So you have to go through the acquired AP up, which is pretty great. You're going to want it anyways. To get 5 additional agility, base agility on this Esper is 16, so 21 is going to tie for the fastest Esper in the game, and that is a very important thing. It's a very important source of agility. Every agility you can get this way matters and is helpful. We also saw a lot of accuracy on the card, so this is going to help supplement that. We've got some more accuracy here. We've also got critical rate, critical damage, and then we've got some of the more specific stuff, more specific resistances and offenses, that kind of stuff. But I think these are the base things that everybody is really going to want off of this Esper. Going back to units, let's also talk about Glaciella, because Glaciella is a unit that we're going to be getting probably pretty soon. I would imagine that she's going to hit around September. Going to release the LB enhancement system, which on JP coincided with the summer units at the beginning of September. So I would imagine that they're waiting to re-release the summer units until then. And I would imagine that, you know, not to pussyfoot around, they just give us Summer Glaciella right off the bat. She's a 100 cost water unit. She has a really, really cool TMR. This is kind of in line with Hio's TMR, and we're going to see more TMRs like this. But this is probably my favorite because single target resistance 25 is just a pretty well applicable skill. Also, fire and water resistance, not necessarily the best, but interesting and could be helpful for certain builds. 12 defense certainly gives you a really great place to build from for this. But let's talk about her skills, because she is going to be a greatsword character. She's going to be a pretty powerful one, a la Brawler, but she's going to have a lot of ways of generating hate as well. So she's going to be, I don't want to say like a tank necessarily, because it's coming off of her dream ability. She's getting 5 from full dream enhancement. And then going into her skills, you can, I thought it was a support skill. Oh yeah, it is. Increased chance of being targeted 5. So also here. So this is a pretty cool type of hate, but it means that she can't reapply it later in the game. So this is going to be really good for messing up enemy formations and getting the first couple of hits to land on this girl. And she's going to be, it seems, able to take hits pretty well, even for a water unit, which typically they can, especially from physical. But she is a versus physical type greatsword unit, so she's going to be pretty good with that. Debuff effect weakening is also pretty cool. 15 AoE resistance, it just makes that a really nice one. Also we see HP and defense, but also move up and agility. Those are both pretty great, and depending on how you're doing things, the HP and healing power up could be pretty cool. Increase acquired AP could be great if you're running into AP problems, but I don't think that's going to be the default. This is kind of a new type of counter we're going to be seeing a lot more of. This is the defensive version of this type of counter. If it is slash or magic damage, there's a 70% chance for this to proc, and it will reduce the damage taken by 40%. These are the two most common damage types in the game, so this is incredibly impactful in a lot of matchups. I think it's very powerful, and I see no reason to talk about other stuff for her in that respect. She can give herself Protect and Elemental Chain Resistance. Gets that up pretty high. 80 is pretty tough, and in addition to Protect, she's going to be pretty well protected from physical targets. She can decrease CT with her kind of basic attack. She can also give herself Courage, and then when a friendly unit is in range, she can also, I believe, give them a physical barrier of 40%. And it is also going to give her an auto cast of a 40% threshold heal when she hits 50%. So that's going to make her really hard to take down, in addition to Courage. So getting Courage and a threshold heal on the same skill are pretty great, but she also has the ability to help one of an allied unit as well. She can break physical barriers, but also this skill is going to reduce physical damage taken for herself for one time by 70%, which is huge. Just huge physical damage mitigations. Even if she doesn't have defense and that kind of stuff, just huge physical damage mitigations, and being able to dispel this kind of stuff and break shields is going to be really important for taking her on. Then she gets an upgraded skill. This one is really powerful. It is a single target skill that hits up to 2 targets. Really great range around her, which is good because I'm thinking from this type of a tanky unit, you want her in the thick of it as quick as possible. So she's going to be in the middle of stuff and maybe able to hit really consistently 2 people with this. Before dealing damage, it increases her defense penetration by 40. 165 mod isn't huge, but it will dispel re-raise and decrease their defense penetration by 30 for 3 turns, and increase her own defense by 40 for 1 turn. So this is incredibly similar to the new upgrade for Raldor into 140 in that it's going to break their ability to break through defense while making her defense pretty fucking immaculate. Which is going to mean that even if they survive, they're going to survive without re-raise. They're going to survive without their defense penetration, or without a bit of their defense penetration, and she is suddenly going to have a lot of defense in addition to probably a couple barriers because, you know, you saw the rest of the kit. 165 mod AoE, pretty short range unfortunately, but it is a guaranteed hit and has a 25% chance to inflict stop. This is going to be really effective against Elena specifically, or just your higher faith evasion units in general. She's the only one I can think of off the top of my head in terms of like magical evasion units. So she's going to be really susceptible to being stopped, although I think she probably resists stop. It feels like she would. Let me know in the comments. Does Elena resist stop? Anyways, that could be really effective against her, but it is pretty short range, and stop doesn't land as often as you think. I mean, I don't know. Could this be better than Dystopia on Dark Fina, which is pretty cool, but also sort of unimpressive? I'm skipping an AoE agility down is actually pretty cool, but I usually skip these. This also reminds me very heavily of Summer Elsorel. This girl reminds me of like a physical Summer Elsorel so much. And I bet they would be a really amazing physical hunting combination together. Dragoon, this skill would be really cool if she didn't already have a much better way of gaining Protect, but this is a pretty powerful skill. It might be worth it to double down, but I'm not sure that a unit will double down on Protect like that. I'm just not sure it works in the AI. This could also be really helpful. This is a unit that you want to get in the thick of things as quickly as possible, so being able to buff their movement is great, but on certain maps, if you don't have the distance, this is also, in addition to taking up one of those buffs that you desperately need, going to put them closer and more in range for damage sooner, which means it has a much higher likelihood of being the only buff that they use, so that can be quite a problem. And then a skill that can decrease evasion rate. I think that this is probably, Dragoon is probably the more applicable sub-job in most cases. Also just kind of a throwback to the original Glaciella being water pierce damage, but I think that there is a strong case to be made for Thief being the best PvE class for her, in that you have steal time, and in manual I can also imagine that people would really like the opportunity to steal heart as well. And something in here increased accuracy for allies, but I think I completely missed that somehow. Oh wait, when in range, yeah, you also increase, wow. That feels pretty strong. It does a lot of stuff. This is all off of that one skill. That's pretty nuts. Okay, so limit break here, 43 AP, certainly a lot more cost efficient than Bridal alaya, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Increase attack by 40%, doing damage of 200%, and this is also going to, looks like after damage, increase AoE resistance by 40 for 2 turns for self, which is just another way that this girl is going to be basically immune to damage. I mean, we're talking high damage mitigations all the way across the board. I think this unit is going to be really tough. Will she get punched out by Bridal alaya? Almost certainly, so let's look at her next. Okay, so Bridal alaya is a new 100 cost DPS. This is a really interesting skill on the TMR that I think could be really helpful for older strike units that need better new age buffs. But this is pretty strike specific as far as AP up buffs go, so it makes it a little bit less usable across the board. But as you're seeing here, we're getting a lot of AoE resistance, accuracy, defense penetration off the master ability, so that's really cool to see. You know, because at that point, she only needs another 80 here in the passives or with the skill, and she's at 100% defense penetration. Strike attack resistance penetration isn't really important at this current moment. They really lack a lot of ways to deal with strike damage, which means that that part of her damage is already pretty much unmitigated. Hey, remember how I said we were going to see this skill again? Yep, it's here, 24% attack, defense penetration. This goes unupgraded. It's still a really good skill for her. You still want the defense penetration for her to bring her up to 60 and to raise her attack up as high as you can. What you would also use with this, I think there are good cases to be made for everything that's not a gunner passive. But I think that the one that is probably the most likely, I would think that you would appreciate the extra movement and the decreased chance of being targeted, just looking at how the rest of her stuff works and the ranges of some of her skills. But I can see evasion rate if you build her the right way, but more importantly the acquired AP, because she is a very AP hungry unit in a way that we'll talk about, but also getting rid of reaction blocking, even though, as I said with Comral, a lot of the reactions that are particularly scary, like the one on Glaciella, don't really target strike, so maybe not as important for a strike unit, but there are definitely other counters. Speaking of those types of counters, chance to counter slash and magic damage, 70%. This is going to be preemptive 125 non-elemental damage. This is going to hit earth units hard. Even if they build for lightning resistance, this is still going to smack you very hard. And the absolutely dominating paradigms within Earth right now are slash and magic damage, with the exception of Dialdo dealing pierce damage, and he is their tank, so naturally not really a threat to this girl here. So I think there's just no question that's the best. Like, that is such a that type of counter is so likely to go off in this meta that it's you don't talk about the other things unless they get reflex, and then maybe it's a toss up. But her basic skill is going to increase her attack, which with the range being kind of short, I don't really like that. This isn't really buffing range. If she's in this range with something else, I don't think I want her worrying about increasing damage after she deals damage and piddle farting them with a little bit of ping. You know, this might be a good move for her to take somebody out with, finish somebody off with, and be even stronger for the next person that might not be as pingable. But I don't really like this skill at all. This is going to increase her basic attack, which is again is non-elemental strike damage, to be just as strong as her counter skill, so giving her another way, if she runs out of AP especially, to deal non-elemental damage, and you know, being strike damage again, pretty unmitigable. And then this is gonna, a later skill is gonna get increased paralyze proc rate, which is a whole different build that we could talk about for her, but this skill is gonna give her protect and shell for 3 turns, which is a pretty good combination together. She also has a buddy buff skill that is going to give 30 AoE resistance, which I believe is a new high. It is also going to give her courage. No, it's going to give all of them slash resistance of 20. In addition to her buff, this is going to, in addition to her counter, this makes her very resilient against slash units. And that is, again, a lot of the meta right now. Our meta being very physical. It's also going to dispel auto revive for allies on hit, which is pretty big. And then physical damage plus 20% and a extra buff at 20% AP. I'm sorry, 20% HP. So pretty much when courage triggers, what is going to happen is this buff is going to go off, decreasing her hate by 6, hopefully making her not likely to get finished off. But at the same time, being a strike unit, she's likely up front. She might be the only thing in range for them, so that could be a problem with that. It's also a problem if the courage gets dispelled as well, but it is what it is. She has a skill that gets upgraded twice, and this one is really amazing because it becomes a select up to 3 targets, which is awesome. The range on this is massive, so if she gets in the middle of their ranks, she's going to be able to hit the entire team with this every time for only 29 AP, 200% mod, but it's going to increase her strike attack resistance penetration by 40 before dealing damage. This is very helpful for her, just in ensuring that there is no way to stop her. She will be unstoppable, even into the future, I would say, because this isn't really something we worry about now, but in the future it could be, especially as she comes to dominate more of the meta. And it's going to take a lot for her to not be relevant as a strike unit. It also is going to cancel ability activation, so this is really good against casters, and targets are going to lose 200 CT, which is, I think, equivalent to the LB on Valentine's Ildira, except, dare I say, more likely to hit 3 targets and without the CT up buff for yourself. But, like, your team is going to be lapping people with her, I think, pretty often because of the skill. And it's massive and future-proofs her. It's awesome. 200% modifier on the next skill. This is the one that has a 45% chance to inflict paralyze, which is itself an 80% chance of paralysis for 3 turns. This is also on an AoE. You could shut down an entire team this way. And this is a really good reason that you might run her with really high faith. And I think that the shell being in her kit is a really, and also the magic counter as well, is a really good incentive to be able to run a higher faith on her and just kind of ignore the magic or just focus on the physical matchups. And her final skill is not too much to write home about, but it is a 3-hit skill, and it has the ability to break physical barriers, which is one thing on the checklist nowadays, and is going to be incredibly important for her matchup into Summer Glaciella. Looking at subjobs, interestingly enough, she can also decrease strike resistance. I think this might be a little bit redundant. It's already unnecessary, could be more necessary in the future, as I point out. This is a way of future-proofing her, but at the moment, it is not only unnecessary, but also kind of redundant when her best ability is absolutely already giving her SARP, strike attack resistance penetration. So, you know, not the biggest thing. Also, really close range, high damage move for 26 AP. But I think that the thing that's really going to be good for her, because unfortunately I don't think it's Gunner. This council, I believe, seems like it would be a good buff for her, but not necessarily. I'm not sure I want to work it into her buff order. This could be really helpful for supporting a team of gunners that are with her, just by kind of having her run out a la Snow and kind of soak up damage and fuck with people while your gunners pick people off. This is definitely a viable strategy within Lightning, so this could work help with that. But other than that, I don't really see a lot of utility in this sub job. What I really see a lot of utility in, especially since she's a bit AP hungry, is getting an AP auto restore here. In addition to a damage barrier, this is another way to give her general ability to reduce damage. Also, she has amazing agility, so she's going to get a massive bonus from the 25% agility up until she's hit. Not necessarily an evasive unit, but with evasion rate boosting, also, you know, this kind of plays into the hate down aspect of her kit. This could make it with passive support, with VC support, which isn't necessarily available for lightning or strike, unfortunately, but it is what it is. But, you know, if you could get her to dodge a couple times, maybe she stays faster longer, but I don't think it's going to be super reliable for her. That being said, she is easily the strongest unit that's coming, although I think Summer Glaciella probably gives her a little bit of a run for her money. They're both pretty tough, but like everybody else that we have to talk about here, these four, not necessarily the sharpest tools in the shed. I'm just saying, these 3 are 70 cost units, and they're good for what they are, and they're really interesting to talk about, and maybe I'll do that in a future video, but really I think we can ignore them for right now. So let's just talk about Melnia. So Melnia is going to be a super ranged unit with access to ranged pierce damage, single target resistance, accuracy, reaction block rate on master abilities and dream. That's going to play into her kit. Missile attack resistance, penetration, and increased range of 2 I think is incredibly powerful for her and just really helpful. You could also pair that with this skill, which I think is going to be incredibly important for her as well. Defense penetration 40, so you've got the combo of defense and missile down by 40. Decrease AP consumption by 25, I think that's going to be important for her as well. But decrease move 1 for self, this is the original Alaya trick, and I think that it is still something, that more and more units could use. So it's a welcome addition here. In addition to that, I think you could probably throw the defense penetration and crit rate on instead of the range and missile attack penetration. I think those are probably less important, and that would get you up to an 80 base defense penetration, which would be really good. She has reflex from Ranger, right? She has reflex from Ranger, so that's what you're gonna run. It's reflex, you do it. I don't really like this skill here. It does have piercing, so she could shoot someone through someone, but I don't think that's gonna happen very much. Increased modifier for some of these effects. Okay, sure, whatever. 40% attack, 25% crit rate, 1 range, very important for a kit, I believe, and a vitalize effect, so 25% agility for 3 turns. That's a pretty good stack for a selfish buff. Then the AoE buff that she has access to is also quite good and quite big and does quite a few things that we haven't seen before. Granting protect for 4 turns for allies in a big area. So that's going to make people significantly beefier to physical damage for a while. It also gives her the ability to dispel re-raise. It gives her 20 defense penetration, which if you're running both of her defense penetration passives, that should get her up to 100%, even without needing to get more defense penetration from equipment or stuff like that. And it's going to give her AP auto restore, which is always welcome to see, especially for a unit like this. And it also kind of tells a story that she's going to have AP restore, she's going to have AP consumption down. That could make her very AP independent. She has a select up to 2 targets skill that has a chance of putting them to sleep, also piercing, so it could hit quite a few people actually, since she is shooting in 2 directions. Wait. No, I'm sorry, it's not piercing. It moves in a straight line though. So it will hit things in front of things. It is not piercing. I made that mistake on the last one that was like that too. Oops. see misunderstanding the symbols. It will say piercing in here if it's piercing. I don't know what the condition is for this increasing its modifier by 75%. It would be quite powerful at that modifier. A big, you know, on an AoE. Be pretty cool. 32 AP, I really want to know what this is. This is a full dispel set and increases its modifier. So this basically turns into dispel spread, which is pretty good. I'd still like to know what triggers that, but you know, we'll get there one day. Global. I don't necessarily think that she needs another reduce. Wait, there was a reduced counter chance in here, right? No, there isn't. So reduced counter chance in the sub job, but I think we also get that from Ranger. And it's also possible to get that from... Nope, that was immobilized, right. So let's move on to Ranger. I think this is the sub job for her for sure, because you get really good kit for low AP, and she really needs some low IP skills to help benefit and keep her sustaining. So Sharpshoot is going to be really good for that. I also think that it was Shadowbind, I believe, is a really good skill. I really like the upgraded Shadowbind on ranged units because, I mean, just having access to reduced counter chance is important, I think, but also, even though the damage modifier isn't high, being able to keep somebody immobilized away from a gunner, especially when you have such a good range here. I mean, imagine we're adding 2, maybe even 3 with a buff onto the range of this because of her passives and stuff. So, you know, most people are not going to be in range of you if they get hit by this at your maximum range. So I think that's pretty cool as a supplement to her kit. This skill finally being good is cool, but she does have a really good buddy buff as it is. She doesn't need to shop around for one. And while I think that there are definitely some cool skills in here, you're not going to be running the passive to make this better. So you're just going to be... So you're going to have the shorter range. Pretty decent modifier. I would say this is one of my favorite things for her as a ranged unit in here, just because of the immobilized, for the reason I just said. It is conditional on a critical hit, but you also decrease healing power on a critical hit, which I think would be pretty cool as well. So, you know, a little trade-off here, but it would give you access to a secondary damage type so that you're not purely missile, but I think it's so easy to get the missile resistance penetration on her that I wouldn't even really worry too much about that. And then her limit break is the way that she's going to be able to break physical barriers. So ding, 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 check that off the checklist. Single target, 200 mod, and a 67% chance to inflict poison for 3 turns. And then if the target has one or more of the following effects: poison, increase human killer for target. Yes. If the target... Okay, whatever. I think it's going to give her a 40 human killer. That's going to be a lot to someone who's poisoned. So she's going to do a lot of bonus damage to poisoned individuals. Seems pretty cool. But I don't think that this is necessarily anything that Earth needs too bad. Earth is doing pretty well where it is. And... alaya is going to be an issue for Earth's dominance for sure, in that, you know, the one really reliable way to tank through lightning was to go for elemental resistances, because it was easy for them to get slash attack resistance penetration, easy for them to get defense penetration on a lot of their units. So you really wanted the resistances. Well, now she's breaking through those resistances even stronger than Skahal was, who was previously really good at doing this. I definitely gonna struggle, cause some problems for Earth's dominance. I guess this unit could counter her fairly well. you know, in that counter ability isn't going to be triggering, that she's going to stay farther away from her than other units will. But I don't know. Do you need her? Even though that is going to be like one of the big things in the meta, do you really need Melnia? And do you need her right now? I don't know. Even as an Earth player, I'm not really super excited for her. Also, I didn't go for Relugia, and you know, not having like another Earth unit to play with her is kind of a bummer. So with that being said, those are the crunch units that I think we needed to talk about. I guess there are the other 70 cost units, but I don't know, man. Though, first of all, those usually have banners where they're insanely easy to pull. They're probably more on the level of a vision card, or something closer to that. I don't know. I remember them being really easy to pity. Easy to get if you want them. But at the same time, not the most impactful. Like, if you already have 100 cost units for that element, don't worry about it. Pull it when you pull it. Like, I don't think we really need to discuss those necessarily. They're easy to pull if you want to, and they're not super impactful if you don't want to. So you're not really missing anything. Even though they do some really interesting stuff, and they do have interesting flavor, I just don't think they're required for where the game is at right now. So anyways, if you appreciated this look at the future of the road to worldwide, you can thank me by liking, commenting, and subscribing to the channel. Also, check out that link in the description to get access to all of the great, wonderful world of Jackie Fox content, from videos to podcasts to books to Discord to games even, to places where you can donate and help support the channel. But whatever you decide to do, I'll see you in the next one.